Hello and good morning. My name is Kelly Cristaldi, and you saw me yesterday. We are so excited to welcome you back to the technology stage here at RNS. But today I have a different co host joining me for this morning's session. I am joined by our Director of Product, Jason VanLue. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are we doing today?
Doing awesome. How are you?
Doing great. So excited for another day of RNS of just really rich learning. And it's going to be another wonderful day, just where we're going to learn a lot about diversifying giving this time around. Of course, we're all very familiar with our traditional form of giving, things like cash, ACH transfers, credit cards, debit cards, things like that. But we're actually going to be kind of looking at other alternative methods for growing generosity with your givers. Most importantly, things like non cash assets, cryptocurrency, and more. We have another presenter, Mr. Vance Roush from Overflow, who is joining us here momentarily virtually from California, which is very exciting. Good morning, Vance.
Hey, what's up, team? Good to see you. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, super excited to have you as well. We are super stoked to have you join us here at RNS. But if you just want to give a brief introduction to yourself and to Overflow.
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. My name is Vance. I am the founder and CEO of Overflow. We have been building this company for the last several years, really with a passion to unlock unprecedented amounts of generosity through the form of non-cash assets. This was our revelation just a few years ago that 90% of wealth is actually in non-cash assets with the donors that you already have that are already supporting you. But it's really difficult, through just the manual forms and fax machines required to facilitate a non-cash gift like stock. And so we want to take away that friction so that those type of gifts can flow a lot smoother. And so we've been going for several years, serve hundreds and hundreds of customers like American Cancer Society, partner with Virtuous, obviously, and serve all of their customers through a tight integration. And so really happy to be here to talk about this really important topic.
Yeah, we're super stoked to have you here as well. And then, of course, we have Jason. And Jason, why don't you give us a little intro to yourself as well? Like, I know that you and I work together and I know what you do here at Virtuous, but for everybody else, what do you do?
That's a good question. I think everybody here is asking that question as well. I lead the product team, and so we figure out what we're going to build, when we're going to build it, how we're going to continue to add value to all of our customers. And one of those ways is through building more robust, holistic, dynamic giving experiences. And so this is a really relevant topic because as we've seen at this event and at other events as well, not only is it important to build relationships, build personal relationships, but this is a multi-generational thing, right? And so even as we talk about diversifying giving options, we have to consider the next generation. I have 3 kids. My oldest just turned 17, and so I think about as he grows up, like what is his MO going to be when it comes to giving to organizations. So it's not just about the folks that we have now, but how are we going to build experiences, build those personal foundational things for folks in the future as well. So really excited to chat with Vance here today and kind of dig into this with everybody.
Awesome.
All right. Well, we're gonna just keep rolling. It's great to see everybody. I can't see everybody, but I'm sure you're there with your smiling faces, full cups of coffee. Thank you so much for joining us. It really is an honor to have you here, and I'm just so inspired by all of the organizations represented. Personally, I build software, and so that is my small contribution. But I'm just so inspired by all of the work that y'all do to build impact, to serve one another. It just really is inspirational. So whatever we can do to help you in that, we are more than happy and fully committed to do. So Vance, I'm going to kind of turn it over to you. We've got a few things listed here in terms of our agenda. You've already kind of mentioned sort of where you're coming from the Overflow side of things, but maybe you can just give like a sort of 100,000 foot view, like why is this important as we start thinking about multi-generational giving, but also just giving in general. Why would this topic, having different ways of giving, be so important, especially as we consider how giving is changing, and also how we're talking about this whole topic around responsive fundraising, personal, relationship building, things like that.
Yeah, and we are both technology companies, and it's really an honor and a privilege to be able to help provide innovation into a really important space, right? We're collectively serving charities, churches, nonprofits that are standing in the gap and solving problems that are pressing in our society. And to do that requires resources. We know that more accelerated their vision and mission.
Oh, it looks like we are having just a touch bit of
That
some
happens with a
internet
virtual
issues.
conference, right?
It does, and it is quite all right. But to just kind of look at the agenda here as we are waiting for Vance to return to us. We are going to talk a lot about the importance of accepting those stock gifts. Talking about generational giving, really diversifying that, and making sure that we're, as nonprofits, looking towards the future. Right? If we had that crystal ball, what does that look like? And how do we best prepare for the inevitable future of giving? How to then implement stock gifts at your organization. We talk a lot about like these great new ways to increase giving in our organizations, but we're actually going to give you those really tactical key takeaways on how to do so. And it looks
Yeah.
like Vance was able to return, which is wonderful.
Sorry about that, team.
Oh,
Looks like I went out for a second. But what I was saying is, in the world of fundraising, especially in the past decade, right, we have seen tectonic shifts in the way that people give. And so if we characterize the last decade, really it's been the proliferation of online giving, of even giving on your mobile phone, right? You could probably now see that more and more giving is not coming through checks, more and more giving is not coming through wire transfers, but it's the convenience of being able to click a button online, matching the behavior of how they buy things on Amazon, how they buy things and purchase things through payment processors like PayPal, is the same way that they want to give. And so, if that is how things have shifted technologically, if that is how things have shifted behaviorally for givers, but we know that 90% of their wealth is actually in non-cash assets, why would we not provide a seamless experience for them to be able to give in that way through a click of a button as well? If you are a nonprofit, if you're a charitable organization, if you're a church right now and you received a stock donation before, you would know how much of a headache it is actually just for you as the administrator trying to receive the gift, let alone the process that the donor has to go through in regards to downloading forms, filling them out physically, and faxing them in, right? And so why this is so important is because we believe there is huge opportunity, the same way that people now give regularly through debit and credit. We believe the next wave that is going to unlock incredible generosity is through the form of non-cash assets, specifically to start with stock and crypto. And so I know we have a slide talking about, for example, why stock, for example, to start with. Well, we know this, that the average stock gift nationally right now is a $5,000 gift. If you look at other fundraising platforms nationally, the average gift via debit and credit card is sub $200. And that varies per platform and that might vary per organization, but at large, you are yielding a 10x, 20x type outcome through unlocking stock donations. What does unlocking it mean? Educating your donor base about it and also providing them a seamless way to be able to do it. The research actually shows that up to 80% of donors own appreciated assets like stock. But currently today, here's the gap. Only 20% actually donate those type of assets. And so there is a big missed opportunity there. Just think about it this way. If the 60% that have stock are not giving stock, if they are giving to you, they're giving a much less generous gift. They might be giving to you, but if they're giving from their checking account or their savings account, then that is a much less generous gift than if you encourage them to consider giving a stock donation. Another reason why stock donations are really, really cool, or non-cash assets in general are really cool to give, is because it's not just a great gift for the organization, but it is a great gift in terms of tax savings for the donor. And so a lot of savvy donors would know this and probably already given stock because capital gains tax is protected in the process. So if somebody has held a stock for over a year and are sitting on appreciated gains, if they liquidate it, they would actually be subject to up to 30 or even some cases 40% in capital gains tax. But if they give it, they can receive the fair market value as a charitable tax deduction. And then the organization gets the fair market value as a gift. When the charitable organization, a 501c3 tax exempt organization, liquidates it, the capital gains tax is protected. The 501c3 does not have to pay capital gains tax on that liquidation. So that is a really, really important consideration for organizations as they educate their donor base, because when you educate them, there's actually less of a solicitation feel to this, but it's more like, this is how we want to serve you with this education and this empowerment. And donors, supporters of your organization get really, really excited about those opportunities. Likely, if they've never given stock but have stock, they probably didn't even know that this was an opportunity. So we love that. We can go on to the next. Yeah. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah. I was just going to sort of maybe dig into that last point there, because I think that's an important tie-in to even some of the other things that we're talking about at the Responsive Nonprofit Summit, which is, somebody goes on, they're like, wow, you actually accept stock, and that's amazing. I'm going to give. And then there's the opportunity to convert them into recurring donors. There's the opportunity to get them into that responsive flow so that we can begin building that relationship. So yes, it's important because, as you said, like 5,000 versus 200 or whatever that is, that's a huge difference to the organization. But maybe even more importantly, just getting them into that flow so that you can start building that relationship. That's an awesome opportunity to kind of get them into that funnel. And then be able to love on them in the future, right? And keep, building that relationship. So great way of potentially capturing new donors that maybe wouldn't give, or certainly wouldn't give as much, and then be able to turn those into deeper relationships moving forward. So I think that's awesome. All right, so moving on to kind of a little bit more information about Stock Gives Vance. Tell us a little bit about what can be donated. You already mentioned some really valuable information about capital gains, but maybe talk through a couple of these different types of stocks that somebody can donate to an organization. I don't know if he's on there or not. If not,
oh goodness,
that's all right.
That's all right.
Well,
we
I'm so sorry, guys. There is like a crazy windstorm in the Bay Area. This has never happened to me before, so I apologize the in and out.
All good. So I don't know if you caught that, but Vance, maybe you can just kind of give us an overview of some of the different types of stocks that can be donated to an organization.
Absolutely. And I did see the question around how an organization thinks about receiving these non-cash assets and what they do with it. So I'm going to actually tackle that question through this next topic and this next slide as well, of what type of stocks can be donated. So you got to think about these different securities, these non-cash assets, in these main three buckets. There's actually more, but I'm just going to tackle these three buckets to start. And so the first one is actually the most common: publicly traded stocks. Okay, what are publicly traded stocks? Those are in the form of single stock holdings. So you got to think a lot of your supporters, especially that work for tech companies, might be getting compensated with stock-based compensation. And so the way that it works is that if I work at Apple, if I work at Google, if I work at Meta, I don't only get a base salary, but they reward me with stock-based compensation. So I get single stock holdings in my company as well. So I might have 1,000 people based on my organization. I might want to give some of that, right? Going to publicly traded stocks, not only single stock holdings people have, but they also invest into things like ETFs, right? So ETFs might be index funds like the S&P 500. That's a collection of stocks, and people do this for investment purposes. So they might have publicly traded stocks because they're compensated with it from their company, and also because they are investors. Another tranche that's less common is privately held stocks, privately held shares, equity stakes in privately held companies. Whether this is a startup company that has not gone public yet, or a small to medium sized business, these are actually also securities that can be given. It's a little bit more complicated, but they also can be given towards your organization as well. And then another big bucket is mutual funds, IRAs. So these are more in the realm of retirement accounts. Obviously, there's a penalty before the retirement age in most cases if you want to give from an IRA. But if they did reach retirement age, they are now required to take a RMD, required minimum distribution. A lot of times people don't realize that many boomers right now are not taking their full RMD because of tax purposes. But if they can repurpose some of the RMD they don't want to take and actually funnel it for good to your charitable organization, it becomes a win-win situation because they actually get a charitable tax deduction and they don't get extra taxes on that required minimum distribution. So those are like the three main ways. When you receive these type of securities within your organization, to get to one of the questions that were asked, most organizations that we work with, we see them liquidated immediately. Again, it's good because you don't get any capital gains tax on that liquidation, and it is seen as a safer way to be able to manage those securities. The reality is it needs to be in alignment with some sort of investment policy that you make transparent to your donors. And so there's not necessarily a one way to do it. I actually have seen organizations hold certain stock gifts, certain portfolios, but that is based on a very specific investment policy that's approved by the board. Those are all types of things that we can help, be a sounding board for your organization if that's something that you want to venture in. But I would say 90% of organizations, they liquidate immediately. If they want to have a diversified portfolio, then they just take those liquidated funds and then they put it into their diversified portfolio as if it was just a regular cash donation as well. And so that's how we see most organizations kind of handle these type of funds.
All right, so we already talked a little bit about this, Vance, but you already kind of mentioned the capital gains tax bypass. They can claim a charitable deduction at the current fair market value. What are some other benefits? I mean, a lot of it's common sense, but what are some other benefits that you've seen when donors contribute in this way?
Well, outside of the tax benefits, right? Outside of the main kind of tax savings opportunities, and also the higher charitable tax deduction that they're going to get because they're going to get the fair market value as the charitable tax deduction. Really, the other big benefit for the donor, and this actually might be a little bit even more insightful, is the psychology of their ability to give more. So you think about it, right? When somebody is getting paid into their checking and savings account, that's the account that they're using for everyday life. In their checking account, they're doing their budget, and in that account, they're paying their mortgage or their rent, they're paying for their groceries, they're paying for their kids' school fees. And so oftentimes, if they're also considering giving to your organization, it's actually after the leftovers of whatever is left from their obligations in life. And so that's why the average donation value through somebody's checking and savings is typically a lot lower, because they're giving the remaining $100, $200 that month towards your organization, right? They think about psychologically their stock portfolio much, much differently, right? This is money that they are holding for investment purposes. This is money that maybe they're getting compensated with over the top. This is money that maybe have grown over time. And so the psychology of around it is more, well, it's kind of house money. It's kind of money that they didn't really anticipate that they're grateful for. And that's why we call our company Overflow. It's kind of funds that are seen as out of the overflow, out of their abundance. And so when you're giving out of psychologically abundance or overflow, you're psychologically a lot more generous. And that is a huge benefit for a person that already wants to give to your organization, right? If they're already supporting your organization and you give them an opportunity to easily give from their appreciated gains and they can participate at a greater level, whether it's manifesting into building more wells or building more houses or reaching more people or helping, more communities, that is a huge benefit back to the donor. We actually believe this at Overflow, and I know Virtuous is the same. We actually believe there's so many generous people. We are wired to be generous. The friction though is just having the means to be able to be as generous as we want to, or the conveniences to be as generous as we want to. So I would say those are some of the understated benefits for the giver in this scenario.
Yeah, absolutely love that. I mean, giving out of the overflow of your heart, of your funds, such a psychological shift, and for us as organizations, being able to practically tap into that and not just hope that that happens, I think is absolutely huge. So, talked about the benefits for the donors. Vance, talk a little bit about how the nonprofits benefit from having the ability to give through stock, give through non-cash, or give of non-cash assets, might be beneficial to the organization.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we've talked about the tax savings quite a bit. So I'm not going to belabor that too much more. If there's questions around that, we can break down an example for everybody here. But some other bullet points to really, really highlight is that you are really unlocking a new pool of potential donation revenue. I can't emphasize that enough, right? Is that literally where wealth is held in America outside of real estate. Okay. So if you look at, most people that are coming into wealth in their 30s and their 40s and their 50s and beyond, for 80, 90% of Americans, a lot of that wealth is going to be tied up in real estate. But for the top 10% of Americans, most of that wealth is not actually exclusively in real estate like most people. Most of that wealth is actually in equities, it's in securities, it's in investments, it's in ETFs, it's in mutual funds, right? And so if we understand that this is not even just a exclusively major gift donor strategy, which maybe that's how you've thought about this, but because equity securities and stocks have become more democratized more than ever in the last 3 to 5 years, it's not just top 1% of your givers that want to give in this way. It's actually top 10%, if not more, in increasing fashion that want to give in this way. So you want to make sure that you're doing it to unlock this pool. What we like to say is we love unlocking net new opportunities for giving. We actually don't believe this is going to replace, right? Online giving, a lot of it had replaced some of the kind of check-based giving that people did, or the wire-based giving that people did, or the cash-based giving that people did back in the day. Some of it was replacement. What we're seeing with stock and crypto is a lot of it is net new to your organization. So unlocking that new pool is a really, really big benefit for you. Also, what we need to be thinking about is that there was a study done by a university, Texas Tech University, Dr. Russell James, and they actually found that those organizations that are actively promoting stock and non-cash gifts, and that being a way for people to participate in their campaigns, participate in fundraising opportunities, those organizations grew 65% faster year over year than their peer set that did not activate this channel. What does activate mean? We'll talk about more about that in a little bit, but it is, again, educating, enabling, and providing easy ways on your website and other materials to be able to receive these type of gifts.
All right, so we've sort of laid the foundation for why why it's beneficial both to the donor and to the organization. Obviously, the next question is how. And so I think what's really cool about this, Vance, is obviously, like, it makes a lot of sense. But when we start talking about the how, it's actually really easy because you guys have made it easy. It's
Yep.
not only valuable, but it's super easy to do. So we kind of have 4 steps here that we're going to sort of walk through. So step 1, kind of walk us through this process.
Yeah. So step one, this is super important. Um, Getting the internal team to be on board and aligned with how your organization is going to receive non-cash assets. A lot of it is probably going to be stock donations to start, right? And so there has to be a process in place internally. What I see a lot of times is that people, quote unquote, will turn it on their website, but are not coordinated internally. And then charitable acknowledgement letters, thank you letters, the whole process of acknowledging and thanking donors lags because the internal staff wasn't aligned. And then what was supposed to be a celebration moment for the donor becomes a frustration moment, right? And so you want this alignment. That alignment is so important to have internally. Okay, what does that mean? That means making sure that your development team knows about this, that it's in their talk tracks, it's in their text messages, it's in their motion as they, look to fundraise for different campaigns and throughout the year. It's so that your accounting and finance teams knows about this, so they can be expecting these type of non-cash assets. If they're not anticipating it, and then it just comes in and they're back-footed about it, we don't want that. We want everybody to be in line. Is your CRM set up to be able to denote these type of gifts? We know that Virtuous is, and we know that they have specific denotations in their database so that you can separate stock gifts from cash gifts, from debit and credit card gifts, and things of that nature. And that's going to be really important for analytics and insights in the future, and being able to delineate the different type of giving per donor within your database. And then also, are you versed on how to actually properly acknowledge non-cash gifts? This is something that Overflow, specifically in our partnership with Virtuous, specializes on. But the charitable acknowledgement letter and the receipting for non-cash gifts actually differs from a debit, credit, cash, or check gift. For example, to be IRS compliant, the charitable acknowledgement letter should not have the actual value amount. That's actually for the donor or their tax preparer to determine. But the requirement is for you to give the stock symbol, to give the number of shares, and the date in which the shares were received, not liquidated and not initiated, but the shares were received. And so these are some of the nuances that are really important to understand, so that you have the right systems, agreement, and alignment internally to be able to properly and quickly acknowledge these gifts that are IRS compliant. Does that make sense, Jason?
Sure does. And Vance Roush keeping us out of IRS audits since 2022. I think that's super important. All right, so step 2, after we've kind of gone through all of those, what's kind of the next important step that we want to look at?
Yeah, so I touched about this earlier, but really making sure that you have an acceptance and investment policy in place. How are you going to treat these donations when they come in? Are you going to liquidate immediately? If you're going to liquidate immediately, are you using a Virtuous and Overflow solution that will handle that for you? Or are you in partnership with your broker to be able to do auto sweeps, auto liquidation features, whether you have a Charles Schwab Fidelity account, TD Ameritrade account? You need to work with your broker to make sure you have a system in place to be able to fulfill the policy that you have in place. If you have a nuanced strategy outside of that, you just want to make sure that those actions are in line with your stated policy. When donors give, they probably have a certain expectation. And so you want to make sure, like, for example, if a donor is giving because their stock has been falling, and you didn't immediately liquidate, and the value of their gift went down over the course of a few days, then they might be really frustrated, right? And they might reconsider giving again in the future. And so you just want to make sure you're consistent with your stated policy and you're transparent with your donors as they give. I guarantee you're going to have several donors ask about this proactively. And
so back to kind of step 3 here, where you're
Yep,
actually opening
let's do
a
it.
account. Walk us through that.
So if you've aligned your team, you've established a stock acceptance investment policy. If you are not using liquidation services through a solution like Virtuous Overflow, then you need to open up a brokerage account. So this is really important for if you're going to start a campaign and you're really wanting to catalyze a lot of funds and you want non-cash to be part of that strategy, you need to get on opening up a brokerage account right away. Sometimes it could take 2, 3, 4 weeks, depending on what broker that you're working with, because there is a lot of forms. Some brokers require you to make an in-person visit to open up this brokerage account. And it does take time because they do KYC, they do a lot of checks and balances to be able to open that. The last, and this is really the most important step, once you get all the infrastructure in place, you want to market this. You want to educate your donors. You want to educate your supporters. And so, just some quick things, and we could talk about this for a long time, but just some quick things to consider is, are you marketing stock donations on your main giving page, or is it buried in a footer somewhere? Do you have a seamless way to be able to receive it with the click of a button, or are you requiring them to manually have to reach out to you and have to fill out forms and things like that? Are you educating them on the benefits of why this is important and helpful for them to be able to give more and also to save on taxes? You can educate them through social media, through email, through galas, through in-person events, and things of that nature. And so really making sure that you think through your activation, coupling it especially with year-end giving and different campaigns you're doing throughout the year are good ways to do it. To close out really quick, cryptocurrency, how should you be thinking about cryptocurrency? Well, I'll just say a couple things, right? This is not financial advice. And so please do not buy Bitcoin because I'm speaking about this today. Obviously, talk to your financial advisor about those financial decisions. But what I will say is there's 300 million cryptocurrency investors worldwide. And so whether you believe in crypto or not, the reality is a lot of people are participating in crypto. 75% up year to date for Bitcoin. And so that is currently beating the S&P 500, that is beating the NASDAQ, that is beating the market right now. So people are actually sitting on a lot of appreciated gains right now in the form of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. And there are specific nuances with crypto as well. So actually, this is not even required for stock, but for crypto, anything over $5,000 worth of value, if the donor wants to be able to take it as a charitable tax deduction, has to get a third-party appraisal. Through solutions like Virtuous Overflow, we do that on your behalf and we connect all the dots. But if you're doing that manually, you need to make sure that you inform the donor of that nuance, or else it won't be IRS compliant. Why are people participating in crypto, and why is Bitcoin actually going up again this year? Really, one of the main drivers right now, there's a lot of different variables, but one of the main drivers, and a simple way to think about it, is a lot of people view Bitcoin as digital gold and a hedge against inflation. And so that's one of the underlying utilities and why many people believe in the future of crypto. We know, like I said, at least 300 million people are invested into it. And so if you are not actively participating and allowing people to give it, you will be missing out. And so our whole passion is to unlock more ways to give that allows for you to optimize the opportunity for whatever campaign that you have. And it's a really exciting time. Those that are activating this, they are seeing some really great gains and some really great opportunities, which we all know helps accelerate all of our missions and visions with what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and it reminds me a little bit of the shift that we've seen in marketing, right? From all the different social platforms, even the shift to social initially. But the whole concept as we talk about the responsive model, making sure that we're listening to our donors, making sure that we're learning about our donors, essentially marketing to our donors where they are. And so if you're not marketing in the channels where your donors are, you're going to miss out. In the same way here, if you're not providing opportunities to accept donations from your donors in the way that they want to give, then ultimately you're going to be missing out. And so I think it's incumbent upon us as organizations to make sure that we are listening, that we are learning, that we are providing tools, channels, ways to support our donors where they are, how they operate, how they behave, because that's only going to be beneficial to us in the long run. So with that, I know that there's already been some questions coming through the chat. Kelly's been posting some links there, but maybe Vance, you can touch on one of the questions that I saw, because you mentioned wanting to make it as easy as just clicking a button. So talk a little bit about how you've seen this practically applied. I mean, obviously on the Virtuous side, working with the Overflow integration, you can add it to a Virtuous giving form. So it's just an option there where you can select stock giving, and then we're pulling in some of the Overflow user experience through that. But maybe just give a really quick overview about how an organization can practically deploy this across some of their online giving experiences.
Yeah, it's really that easy. And I'm assuming a lot of people that are listening in, are working with Virtuous. So if you are working with Virtuous with your giving, like Jason said, it's simple as adding it as an option in the back end, and then it shows up seamlessly on the giving form. And then from there, we handle everything else on the back end so that stock gift gets to your brokerage, or the value of that stock gift gets transferred to your bank account. The giving form is obviously responsive. In this responsive nonprofit summit, it is responsive on mobile. It's a very clean mobile experience as well. I also saw another question too around just talking to the increasing and decreasing stock value over time. That is actually a pretty common question, and a lot of people, fundraisers, might be tempted to try to time the market. Oh, we'll start promoting non-cash when the market is really, really hot right now. My advice would be this: there's no way you can time the market. And here's the reality: people give out of appreciated gains, and their appreciated gains are based on when they got into the market. And so whether the market is up or down based on what CNBC says is neither here nor there. What actually really matters is what their cost basis is, and that's what determines their appreciated value, right? And so, for example, Bitcoin is relatively down from 18 months ago when it was 60,000 and it's now 30,000, but it's up from when it was $1 in 2013, right? And so it's all relative. And I would say that your non-cash strategy should be less based on the sentiment of the market in that day, and more about a holistic, responsive approach to knowing that at the end of the day, people have these assets and you want to make it easy for them to be able to receive it.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. All right. Well, Vance, thank you so much for jumping on with us today, providing this information. I think it's super powerful, and like Vance has said, we've had a partnership with Overflow now for a number of years. It's an amazing way to add options to your giving experiences. Again, meet your donors where they are, who they are, how they behave, all of those kinds of things. If you want more information, here is Vance's information. His phone number's not on there, so don't text him necessarily. But reach out to him. Definitely check out overflow.co to get more information about the tools that they provide. And if you're a Virtuous customer, or if you're considering Virtuous, we do have a native integration with Overflow. Super easy to set up. So Vance, anything you want to kind of leave us with? All of this has been really, really helpful. Just to provide a great foundation about value and about the reasons why we should be deploying these experiences. But in closing, as we wrap up today, anything else you want to leave the folks with?
Yeah, I think the last thing I'd say, and why we value our relationship with Virtuous so much, is it goes so much beyond one transaction, right? And so as you're considering non-cash, what might drive you to want to receive non-cash is because, oh, you finally got that one donor that said they had a big windfall in their stock portfolio and they wanted to give it to you. And that's fine. But it's so much more than those just one-off transactional moments, right? If the stats say that most of your donors' wealth is starting to be in non-cash assets, you want to take a holistic approach. Obviously, Virtuous really, really helps you do that at scale. And when you couple that with a really, really good user experience, you're not just capturing one transaction, but if they have a delightful stock donation experience in 1 year, they're going to consider doing it again the next year. But the opposite is also true, right? And so that's why we love this partnership so much. We would love to continue to help unlock incredible generosity for your organization. So any way that we can serve, any way that we can help, let us know. And it's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, thank you guys both so very much. And thank you to everybody for joining us this session as well. Next up on the technology stage, I will be welcomed by our very own product trainer, Rachel Specht. And we're actually going to be pivoting a little bit. We've been talking a lot about diversifying giving, but we're actually going to be looking at automation and how to use that type of technology to really scale your personalized outreach with your donors. So it's going to be a really great talk, but here in the next little bit, feel free to take a break, replenish that coffee, get some water, and we will see you all back here in about 10 minutes. Thank you all so much.